Jujutsu Kaisen Chapter 2, 162. Part 2 is here. Yuta might have landed the final blow to Sukuna, and an unexpected sorcerer helps Yuta. Sit back, relax, and let's go through it all. The chapter is published as the second part of Chapter 2, 162. This makes sense since the chapter is 11 pages long and the previous one was 9 pages long, adding up to 20 pages, which is the typical length for Jujutsu Kaisen. On top of that, this chapter was scheduled to be released last week, and I think this further highlights how bad Gega's health must have been since he couldn't even finish the chapter. On the first page, we get an illustration of Rika crying while holding Yuta's corpse, and I don't think this is how it ends for Rika, and I'll tell you why later. On the next page, we get to see Yuta and Sukuna fight hand to hand inside their domain clash. Yuta lifts and throws Sukuna, then he kicks him away, and we get an editor's comment saying, "Infinity versus amplification. The battle will be decided in these 3 minutes." And we learn that Yuta can't use any curse techniques other than Gojo's Limitless right now. Yuta also notices that since Sukuna lost his left arm, he hasn't used the world-cutting slash, so he thinks Sukuna has no other way to overcome Limitless other than using amplification, which gives him the advantage. Yuta then lands a punch on Sukuna's head, but Yuta is slightly having a hard time adjusting to Gojo's long arms and legs, and apparently Yuta suffered from this during switch training. I like the fact that Gege gives attention to such details. However, I really don't like the fact that Yuta did switch training with Gojo just for the fact that Gojo, instead of preparing for his fight against Sukuna, he spent his time training Yuta. Especially when you consider that Gojo was not prepared to face Sukuna's domain at all, while he had access to all the information needed about it. It's like a professional fighter prepares for an upcoming fight by training his students instead of actually preparing for his opponent. Anyway, Yuta knows that he can't master Gojo's Limitless just with one swap training. He says, "I finally get why you need the 6 eyes to use this thing." Yuta remembers Gojo saying, "I'll be fine, I'm the strongest," and thinks about how much did it take to say that confidently. But Sukuna notices that Yuta is struggling with Gojo's curse technique and asks if Yuta really has time to daydream and punches him away. We learn that Kenjaku has informed Sukuna about Yuta's copy cursed technique. He thinks the requirement to copy is most likely Rika consuming a body or a part of the body, but Sukuna wonders if Yuta can use cursed techniques he had copied before, but he realizes that Yuta can only use Limitless for now. Sukuna ponders how long would Yuta's copy cursed technique last. If Kenjaku's cursed technique ends, will Yuta still have Gojo's body? What if Yuta hasn't even thought of what would happen after this fight? Sukuna slowly realizes what Yuta's plan might be, as he remembers Gojo's hollow purple. Essentially, Sukuna is thinking the same as us. All the questions we previously asked are going through Sukuna's brain. Next, we get a small flashback. After finishing swap training, Gojo takes a dig at Yuta, saying his cursed energy is too inconsistent, but he gets immediately rebuked by Maki as she says Gojo's too strict on Yuta, and the others join her to defend a tired Yuta. Back to the fight, Yuta is going through Gojo's memories about the hollow purple and begins the chants for it, but Sukuna immediately grabs hold of his arms and undoes the signs and punches him away. Sukuna thinks to himself, doesn't he understand why Gojo Satoru was forced to fire off purple in such a roundabout way? I won't give him a single opening to use that move. On the other hand, Yuta thinks, Sukuna might still be wary of me using techniques other than Limitless, but he should also know that I can't use 2 copied techniques at once. That's why, even while using this technique even within Unlimited Void, this simple plan will work. Yuta uses blue, and suddenly a recorder flies near Sukuna, in which Inumaki screams, "Don't move!" Sukuna freezes as Yuta fully finishes the chants and loads hollow purple, which is ready to fire on Sukuna at any moment. And sadly, the chapter ends here. And we get the editor's comment at the end, firing off his teacher's ultimate technique. Yuta pulled a genius move on Sukuna, and I'm glad to see Inumaki appear during this final fight. And this explains why Yuta was talking to Inumaki during the 1-month skip. However, that's pretty much how every JJK cliffhanger has been since Gojo died. The character ends the chapter with an insane hype move that could kill Sukuna. Then we understand at the start of the next chapter that it amounted to nothing. I really like the series and Gege is an absolute genius. So what I'm saying isn't coming from a place of hate, but lately, this is what we're seeing. Plus, knowing Gege, I think we still have a couple of characters to be killed off before Sukuna dies. Now the last thing I want to talk about is Rika. I think that we'll see her in the next chapter help Yuta. Remember that at the end of Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 0, Yuta completely frees Rika and lets her go, but she chooses to stay with him. From the start of the series, Rika chooses to stay with Yuta because she loves him, so I don't see any reason why Rika would leave. I think that Rika will follow Yuta and help him fight Sukuna, especially considering the fact that Yuta's attack will fail, and yes, I'm overthinking this, but look at Yuta's purple, the blue and red aren't converging like Gojo's in chapter 235. I know that this probably doesn't mean anything, but at the same time, it might be a bit optimistic for Yuta, who's finding trouble to just control Limitless, to perform its most complicated attack ever.